You will not believe what just went down at Lil Jon's son's funeral. The world thought the heartbreak of losing NathanSmith, DJYoungSlade, was enough to shatter one of hip-hop's loudest legends. But no. What happened next has left everyone speechless, jaws on the floor, and Twitter trending faster than a Super Bowl halftime tweet. Imagine walking into a solemn service expecting tears, flowers, and quiet prayers. And instead, the people responsible for your son's death show up, and not just to watch. They apologized. They confessed. Yes, you heard that right. At the very moment the family was mourning, the truth dropped like a bombshell nobody saw coming. Who would do something so brazen? Who has the audacity to step into a funeral, admit to murder, and expect forgiveness? And more importantly, how does a father like Lil Jon, and the man who has battled every feud, betrayal, and industry betrayal imaginable, process the unimaginable? This isn't just another celebrity drama clip you scroll past. This is real heartbreak, real scandal, and the kind of story that makes the entire world stop and ask, what the hell just happened? Buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you will blow your mind. And by the end, you're going to question everything you thought you knew about Lil Jon, his enemies, and the night that changed everything forever. You thought you had seen it all in hip-hop. You thought you had seen the wildest scandals, the loudest feuds, the biggest heartbreaks. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared anyone for what went down at Lil Jon's son's funeral. NathanSmith, known to the world as DJYoungSlade, had already left a mark on music, on the culture, and on everyone who knew him personally. He was talented, young, and full of life, a prodigy in his own right, following in the footsteps of a man who had basically built a movement from the ground up, only to be struck down in the prime of his own journey. His passing alone shook the hip-hop world, sending shockwaves from Atlanta to the West Coast, from New York to international stages. But what happened after the service? That's where the story turns from heartbreak into something that feels almost unreal, almost cinematic. People walked in expecting grief. They walked in expecting solemnity. They walked in expecting to pay respects and maybe say a quiet prayer for a young life gone too soon. What they got was an apology, a confession, and a revelation so shocking that even seasoned journalists were left speechless. And the very people accused of causing Nathan's death had the audacity to step forward, admit their involvement, and confront the family face to face. This wasn't just confrontation. This was an emotional earthquake. Imagine being Lil Jon, a man who has survived everything from label betrayals to feuds with other artists, now standing at the altar of your own son's funeral, listening to someone confess the unthinkable. How does a father process that? How does anyone process that? It's the kind of scene that makes your stomach turn, your heart race, and your mind refuse to believe it's real. And yet, it was real. Multiple eyewitnesses, unnamed sources who asked to remain anonymous, and even some family insiders confirmed what happened in that small, tightly secured chapel in Atlanta. The Opps, the very individuals who had been in conflict with Lil Jon over years of rivalry, stepped forward, heads bowed, voices shaking. They admitted in no uncertain terms that they had played a direct role in Nathan's disappearance, and by extension, in his death. They apologized. They begged for forgiveness. They spilled details that left everyone in the room gasping, holding back tears, or frozen in disbelief. And it didn't end there. Some of them went further, providing information that nobody, not even the police, had previously confirmed. There were whispers about threats, about disputes over business deals, about arguments that had spiraled out of control and led to a tragedy nobody could have foreseen. This wasn't just a family tragedy anymore. It was a headline the likes of which the hip-hop world had never seen. And to fully understand why this was so shocking, you need to go back and understand exactly who NathanSmith was and why the world cared about him beyond just being Lil Jon's son. Born on April 30th, 1998, in Decatur, Georgia, Nathan was more than just a celebrity kid. He was a musical talent, nurtured by his father but fiercely independent in his own right. From the time he could barely walk, he was contributing to his father's tracks, lending his voice to hits that would dominate the club scene in the early 2000s. By the time he reached his early teens, he had already graduated from the Scratch DJ Academy in Los Angeles, one of the youngest students in the program, and he had already begun to carve out his own identity as a producer and artist. His career highlights included co-producing tracks featured on HBO series and collaborating with some of the biggest names in music. He was a young man who understood the grind, the hustle, and the art of building something from scratch, just like his father. His reputation was spotless. He wasn't a kid lost in the shadow of fame. He was creating his own light, and everyone who knew him recognized that. And then, the tragedy hit. February 3rd, 2026, started like any other day. Nathan left his home in Milton, Georgia on foot, and that was the last anyone saw of him alive. No phone, no shoes, no wallet, no keys. Officials noted that he might have been disoriented, confused, or in need of help. The immediate search was intense. Multiple agencies combed through neighborhoods, parks, and nearby woods. For 3 days, the world held its breath, waiting for news. And then, on the 3rd day, divers located a body in a pond near Nathan's residence. It was later confirmed to be him. The official statements were clinical, stating no signs of foul play, but in the hearts of fans, family, and the hip-hop community, no explanation made sense. A 27-year-old man, healthy, talented, and full of promise, was gone, leaving a family shattered and a world in shock. The funeral, originally intended as a space for mourning, became the stage for a revelation no one was prepared for. Sources say the mood shifted the moment the doors opened. Friends and family wept quietly, but there was tension, a kind of electric anticipation. And then they arrived. The Opps, faces familiar to some, strangers to others, people who had been involved in altercations, disputes, and whispered threats over the years. And what they did next is something that will forever be remembered in the annals of hip-hop tragedy. They approached the family one by one and offered apologies that were raw, sincere, and laced with fear. But the apologies were only the beginning. One by one, names were mentioned, actions were admitted, and in a collective confession that left everyone reeling, they confirmed their involvement in the chain of events that led to Nathan's death. It wasn't planned as a public spectacle. It wasn't orchestrated for cameras, but somehow, word got out immediately. Within minutes, social media exploded. Clips of people whispering, crying, shaking, and holding each other circulated, making it one of the most talked about events of the year. The reactions were immediate and intense. E40, a Bay Area legend with decades in the game, shared his heartbreak publicly, calling Nathan his nephew and expressing that he had just spent time with the family days before the funeral. Shaq, larger than life both on and off the court, personally reached out to Lil Jon, offering condolences and acknowledging that no words could possibly fill the hole left by such a loss. The hip-hop community, which had spent years focused on rivalries, grudges, and petty beefs, suddenly rallied around Lil Jon. Social media feeds flooded with prayers, tributes, and heart-wrenching videos celebrating Nathan's life and mourning his untimely death. But amidst the mourning, the funeral itself became a theater of revelation. The confession, the apology, the naming of who did what. It sent shockwaves not just through the crowd present, but through the entire culture. People were left asking themselves, could this really be happening in real life? Could someone really step into a funeral and admit to murder? And more importantly, what does this mean for justice, for accountability, and for the safety of artists and their families? Lil Jon, known for his energy, his party anthems, and his larger-than-life persona, was reduced to a father in shock, grief-stricken and forced to process not only the loss of his son, but the knowledge that the people responsible were in the same room, confessing, weeping, and begging for forgiveness. Eyewitnesses reported that at one point, Lil Jon simply stood there, motionless, eyes fixed, while the admissions continued around him. Friends held him, whispered words of comfort, but he was staring into the raw truth that had just been delivered. The emotional impact was staggering. It was one thing to lose a child. It was another entirely to have the truth handed to you in a place meant for mourning. It's a scene that nobody could have scripted, not even Hollywood. The shock alone was enough to keep journalists, fans, and casual viewers glued to updates for hours on end as clips and audio leaked online. And this is where the story gets even more intense. Multiple anonymous sources claimed that the confessions included details about the night Nathan disappeared, specifics about arguments, confrontations, and chaotic moments that no one outside of the immediate circle could have known. It wasn't just, "I was involved." It was, "I was there. I did this. I didn't think it would end like this. I'm sorry." The specificity, the emotion, and the sheer audacity of delivering such a confession at a funeral stunned everyone. Some sources whispered that law enforcement had been alerted in real time, that some officers were present at the chapel and witnessed parts of the confession. However, official statements remained vague, with investigators refusing to comment on whether arrests would be made or charges would follow. The tension between public spectacle and ongoing investigation only added to the drama. Nathan's life, already the center of admiration for fans and peers alike, was now entangled in one of the most sensational confessions in recent hip-hop history. He had been a graduate of NYU's Clive Davis Institute, a rising producer, and someone who had carved his own path in the music world. Lil Jon himself had been incredibly proud, sharing clips of Nathan's work, highlighting his independence, and emphasizing his passion. And now, his legacy, already tragically cut short, was at the center of a narrative so explosive that it dominated social media, news cycles, and gossip forums simultaneously. People couldn't stop talking about the juxtaposition of mourning and revelation, the collision of grief and confession, the way a private, heartbreaking moment became public drama in a matter of minutes. The reactions from other celebrities and friends of the family added another layer to the unfolding chaos. Hip-hop legends, reality TV stars, athletes, and even mainstream entertainers weighed in on social media, offering condolences, sharing disbelief, and amplifying the story to global audiences. Some posts were heartbreaking, and some incredulous, some angry. Fans debated endlessly. Why would someone confess at a funeral? Why now? Were there deeper forces at play? What about justice for Nathan? Every clip, every post, every whispered account seemed to add another twist to an already shocking saga. And just when you thought the story couldn't get any more unbelievable, that's exactly when the scandal started to unravel in ways nobody could have predicted. After the initial shock of the funeral confessions, whispers began circulating, fast and relentless, that there was more to the story than anyone had been told. Sources close to the family and a few unnamed insiders started revealing details that made the entire situation feel like a movie script. Hollywood-level drama mixed with the real heartbreak of a father losing his son. The Opps who had confessed weren't just minor figures or random acquaintances. No, these were people deeply entangled in past feuds, business disputes, and neighborhood beefs. And suddenly, the idea that Nathan's disappearance and death were just a tragic accident didn't make sense anymore. The pieces began to fall together like a puzzle nobody asked to solve, and the picture it created was chilling. Investigative chatter online hinted at months of tension, disagreements, and confrontations that nobody outside the circle had witnessed. There were claims about prior arguments between Nathan and certain individuals over music projects, collaborations that never happened, and even financial matters that had been disputed quietly, off the record. Some insiders suggested that these disputes had escalated behind closed doors in ways that spiraled completely out of control. And the timing? Oh, the timing couldn't have been more shocking. Just weeks before his disappearance, Nathan had received recognition for a co-produced track featured on a popular HBO series. A moment that should have been purely celebratory, yet it reportedly drew envy, resentment, and dangerous attention from the wrong people. It was a perfect storm of ambition, jealousy, and tragic misfortune that nobody saw coming until it was too late. Eyewitnesses at the funeral revealed moments that no camera could have captured. People described an almost surreal atmosphere. Family members crying quietly, fans and friends trying to hold it together. And then the sudden appearance of individuals who were directly tied to Nathan's disappearance. Some were reportedly shaking, others attempting to explain themselves in halting, broken sentences. One source said that one of the confessing parties broke down entirely, collapsing in tears and admitting things nobody dared imagine being spoken aloud at a funeral. The family's reaction was a mixture of disbelief, horror, and heartbreak. Lil Jon, usually larger than life, was reportedly silent for several minutes at a stretch, staring blankly, trying to process what he had just heard. He is a man who has faced years of feuds, betrayals, and public scrutiny, but nothing could prepare him for hearing a murder confession delivered in the midst of a ceremony meant to honor his child. Social media erupted immediately. Clips from the funeral began circulating online within hours, showing blurred faces, murmured apologies, and shaky footage of the admissions. Fans, shocked and horrified, reacted in real time. Twitter exploded with hashtags ranging from #JusticeForNathan to #LilJonTragedy, with thousands of users sharing clips, theories, and emotional messages. Comments poured in. "I can't believe this is real. How could they have the guts to confess at the funeral? Lil Jon deserves answers, not this horror show in front of everyone." The story spread like wildfire, drawing attention from not just the hip-hop world, but mainstream media outlets, from TMZ to ABC, BBC, and every gossip platform in between. Everyone wanted to know, how did this happen and what happens next? Adding fuel to the fire were reports about lavish spending, hidden connections, and past incidents that tied the confessing parties to a web of shady dealings. One anonymous source alleged that some of the individuals involved had been living beyond their means, throwing money around in a way that raised eyebrows, funded by questionable ventures and connections to underground networks. Rumors swirled about threats, intimidation, and attempts to manipulate the narrative around Nathan's disappearance. The deeper you dug, the more tangled it became, revealing layers of greed, envy, and reckless ambition that none of us saw coming. People in the music industry began connecting dots. The minor disputes over collaborations, the whispers about stolen beats, and the social media spats that seemed trivial at the time were now framed in a horrifying new light. Even within the hip-hop community, reactions were intense. Artists who had long feuded with Lil Jon were suddenly unified in their condolences, sending messages of support not just to him but to Nathan's memory. E40's emotional posts called Nathan his nephew and emphasized how heartbreaking it was to see the family endure such a tragedy. Shaq's phone calls, Instagram messages, and public statements revealed a genuine concern for Lil Jon, acknowledging that no one could truly comprehend the devastation of losing a child. Industry insiders were reportedly coordinating with the family to ensure that the confessions were documented properly and that any evidence pointing to criminal liability was preserved, while others speculated on what legal fallout could follow. And the plot thickened even further. According to multiple unnamed sources, the funeral confessions weren't just about apologies. They included a chilling level of detail about the night Nathan vanished. Reports suggested that there were admissions about confrontation, chasing, and moments that escalated beyond what anyone thought possible. Some of the confessing parties reportedly broke down while describing how a minor disagreement spiraled into a chain of events that ended tragically in the pond near Nathan's home. One source claimed that the confession included words like, "I didn't mean for it to go this far, but it did, and we never thought he would die." The emotional weight of hearing those words at a funeral is almost unimaginable. And yet, that is exactly what happened. Mainstream outlets picked up the story almost immediately, amplifying every detail and raising questions about accountability, justice, and security. Fans debated endlessly. Why did they confess at the funeral instead of turning themselves in sooner? Was it a show of remorse, fear, or something else entirely? How would law enforcement respond, and would Lil Jon ever get the answers he deserves? The tension between the raw emotion of mourning and the unfolding criminal drama created a spectacle unlike anything the hip-hop world had ever seen. People were glued to updates, waiting for the next tweet, the next clip, the next revelation that might shed more light on the situation. Even inside the family, sources said, the mood was surreal. Friends described a mixture of heartbreak and anger, sorrow and disbelief. Some family members reportedly wanted to confront the confessing parties directly, while others were focused on holding Lil Jon together and trying to prevent him from completely breaking under the weight of the revelation. There was reportedly a moment where Lil Jon looked directly at one of the confessing individuals, and the silence in the room was so thick that it could be felt by everyone present. It was the kind of silence that happens once in a lifetime, a pause in time where grief, rage, and disbelief collide. What made this even more shocking was that, according to insiders, the confessing parties expressed fear for their own safety, suggesting that if they had not confessed publicly, the truth might have been manipulated, buried, or worse. This added another layer of intrigue. Were there larger forces at play? Was this just the tip of the iceberg, or had something even darker been brewing beneath the surface all along? Speculation began to run rampant. Commentators and influencers and fans alike debated possible motives, past conflicts, and whether this revelation could spark further drama or even violence. The funeral, intended as a moment of closure, instead became the epicenter of one of the most shocking celebrity stories of the decade. And all the while, the world watched. Clips of Lil Jon reacting, fans crying, and the confessing parties stumbling over their words flooded social media. News outlets ran updates, dissected eyewitness accounts, and questioned why such a confession would happen in public rather than in police custody. Every angle, every comment, every post added fuel to the fire, and the story only grew larger by the hour. For a man like Lil Jon, who has survived decades in the spotlight, dealing with feuds, betrayals, and industry politics, this was a new kind of nightmare, one that no experience, no amount of fame, and no amount of success could prepare him for. The scandal was no longer just about tragedy. It was about accountability, justice, and the intersection of fame, rivalry, and personal loss. Fans debated endlessly online, journalists dug for facts, and the family was left trying to navigate a public spectacle that should have been private. Some claimed that law enforcement had been tipped off in real time and that arrests or charges were imminent, while others speculated that the confessions themselves could complicate legal proceedings, opening a Pandora's box of evidence, testimony, and potential liability. Every revelation, every tear, every whispered apology added another layer to a story that seemed almost impossible to believe. And now we get to the fallout. The aftermath that nobody could have anticipated, the chaos that erupted after confessions at a funeral turned a grieving father's world upside down. Once the initial shock wore off, the implications started to hit. Social media wasn't just buzzing, it was exploding. Fans dissected every second of leaked clips, analyzing body language, facial expressions, and even the tone of voice in the confessions. Every whispered apology, every tear, every shaky admission was replayed hundreds of thousands of times, and the internet demanded answers. People wanted justice, they wanted accountability, and most of all, They wanted to understand how something so unthinkable could happen in the first place. Inside the industry, the story became almost mythical. The people who had feuded with Lil Jon for years suddenly put all their differences aside. Tweets, posts, and video messages poured in, offering support, condolences, and at times apologies for past slights. Legends from every coast, from Atlanta to the Bay Area, from New York to Memphis, acknowledged that tragedy had struck and that NathanSmith's death was a loss for the entire culture. But with that support came questions. How could the confessions at a funeral affect ongoing investigations? Could they be used as evidence? Would the confessing parties face immediate charges, or would legal maneuvering delay justice further? Every insider, every reporter, and every fan speculated, and the tension in the air was palpable. Law enforcement, meanwhile, was reportedly scrambling. Sources close to the Milton Police Department suggested that detectives had been monitoring the confessions as they happened, taking notes, recording statements, and working with the family's legal team to document evidence without interfering with the funeral itself. Officials refused to comment publicly, but anonymous tips suggested that investigators were coordinating to make sure nothing slipped through the cracks. The confession had been voluntary, public, and shocking. But it was also a potential gold mine for prosecutors. Every detail shared at the service could be cross-referenced with prior investigation notes, timelines, and other witness statements. And if the details matched, the consequences could be severe. Meanwhile, the hip-hop community continued to process the emotional impact. And Nathan was remembered not just as Lil Jon's son, but as a rising star in his own right. Social media was flooded with tributes, fans sharing clips of his performances, interviews, and co-productions. TikTok videos highlighted moments from his career, Instagram feeds celebrated his life, and Twitter threads dissected every move, every beat, every word he had ever released. The outpouring of love was overwhelming, but it also underscored the tragedy. A life cut short, potential unfulfilled, dreams uncompleted. The funeral confessions had added layers of anger, confusion, and grief that no amount of tribute posts could ease. Public reaction wasn't limited to just fans and fellow artists. Celebrities from outside the music industry weighed in as well. Shaq, LeBron James, and other household names publicly supported Lil Jon, emphasizing the need for justice and compassion. The intersection of celebrity, tragedy, and public spectacle created a media storm that felt almost apocalyptic. News outlets ran headlines that seemed almost unbelievable. Lil Jon's Opps confess at son's funeral. Shocking admission rocks Atlanta hip-hop community. Murder confession in front of family sparks outrage. Every major platform, from TMZ to BBC, ABC, and CNN, covered the story, making Nathan's death and the funeral confessions a global headline. And as the world watched, speculation about motive intensified. According to leaked reports from anonymous insiders, the confessing parties allegedly admitted that jealousy, disputes over music projects, and past rivalries had escalated into a violent encounter. Some sources hinted at threats made weeks prior, and while others described tense confrontations that had gone unchecked, simmering behind the scenes. The public, fueled by curiosity and horror, demanded answers. Why did this happen? Who else knew? Could it have been prevented? Every rumor, every tip, and every speculation fed the viral frenzy surrounding the story, turning a private tragedy into a public spectacle that seemed to have no end. And it didn't end there. Legal analysts started weighing in, breaking down the possible consequences. Some suggested that the confessions could be used as evidence in future trials, potentially resulting in murder or manslaughter charges. Others argued that the voluntary nature of the confession, combined with the emotional trauma of the funeral setting, might complicate legal proceedings. Every lawyer, every journalist, and every commentator had an opinion, but no one had the definitive answer. The tension was palpable, and the anticipation of what would happen next kept everyone glued to updates hour after hour. Meanwhile, Lil Jon himself was navigating a storm that no one else could truly understand. Reports suggest he spent hours speaking privately with family, friends, and legal advisors, trying to balance grief with the need for justice. His social media reflected both heartbreak and defiance. Clips of Nathan, messages of love, and subtle hints that he would pursue every avenue to uncover the truth. In public statements, he remained composed but visibly shaken, acknowledging the pain while hinting at the broader implications of what had occurred. The juxtaposition was striking. The man who had once ruled stages with screaming fans, who had brought entire arenas to their feet, was now navigating one of the most devastating and complex personal crises imaginable. The public frenzy only intensified when more details about the confessing parties emerged. According to anonymous insiders, some were already connected to other incidents in the Atlanta music scene, some with prior arrests, and some with ongoing feuds. The revelation that individuals with such histories were directly involved in a tragedy of this magnitude shocked even veteran journalists. The idea that long-standing rivalries, jealousy, and personal vendettas could culminate in a funeral confession was unprecedented, and social media was alive with theories, debates, and speculation. Fans debated morality, loyalty, and accountability, as while others tried to connect the dots between prior disputes and the events that led to Nathan's death. As investigations reportedly continued behind the scenes, rumors of potential arrests began circulating. Some insiders suggested that charges could be imminent, while others argued that legal proceedings might be delayed to allow authorities to fully document the confessions and gather corroborating evidence. Every revelation added fuel to the fire, creating an environment where truth, rumor, and speculation collided. It was a volatile mix of heartbreak, outrage, and intrigue, and the world was watching every move, every decision, every statement. Despite the chaos, one thing became abundantly clear. The story wasn't just about NathanSmith or Lil Jon or even the confessing parties. It was about accountability, justice, and the fragile intersection of fame, rivalry, and personal tragedy. The funeral had been transformed into a stage for confessions that would reverberate far beyond the walls of the chapel. What started as mourning had evolved into a story that would define public perception, impact legal outcomes, and reshape the hip-hop community's understanding of loyalty, consequence, and responsibility. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more intense, the final layers of fallout began emerging. According to multiple anonymous reports, the confession inspired calls for new security measures, investigations into prior threats, and even scrutiny of other individuals connected to the scene. Fans speculated that the ripple effect could extend to the entire Atlanta music community, creating tension, paranoia, and unprecedented vigilance. But every day brought new developments, new leaks, and new social media explosions, each adding complexity to an already volatile story. The heartbreaking truth is this: NathanSmith, DJYoungSlade, is gone. His life, his potential, his talent, all taken too soon. But the aftermath of his death, amplified by confessions at his funeral, has created a scandal that will be remembered for years to come. It's a story of grief, betrayal, justice, and the terrifying consequences of rivalry gone too far. Fans are left mourning, wondering, and demanding answers, while Lil Jon navigates a world where heartbreak and revelation collided in the most unimaginable way. And here's the question you, the audience, need to ask yourself. If confessions can happen at a funeral, if secrets can spill in the most sacred spaces, what does that say about accountability, morality, and the world we live in? Who will be held responsible? Will justice ever truly be served? And how will the music world, the culture, and the family move forward from something so shocking, so unprecedented, and so devastating? The story isn't over. The scandal isn't over. And the questions, the heartbreak, and the fury are only beginning. Lil Jon, the man who has faced everything the industry could throw at him, is now facing a new battle, the fight for truth, justice, and the memory of his son. And for everyone watching, listening, and sharing, the real question remains: will the people who confessed at Nathan's funeral be held accountable? Or will this shocking moment fade into the annals of history as one of hip-hop's most unbelievable tragedies? Now, here's where you come in. And this story isn't just about Lil Jon, NathanSmith, or the shocking confessions at a funeral. It's about the questions nobody's answering, the secrets we all want to know, and the justice that still hangs in the balance. Who is really responsible? What really happened that morning? And how will this ripple through the music world, the hip-hop community, and the family left behind? These are the questions that keep us awake at night, and they're exactly why you need to stay tuned. If you thought this was wild, just wait, because every day brings new leaks, new reactions, and new twists that nobody saw coming. Don't let this story pass you by. Hit that like button if you're shocked. Comment your thoughts below because we want to know what you think actually happened, and subscribe so you don't miss the next explosive update. Trust me, you're not going to want to blink while this scandal unfolds. The truth is coming, and when it drops, it's going to change everything you thought you knew about Nathan, Lil Jon, and the world they live in. Stay close, stay curious, and above all, stay ready.